Hello,
Hi,
I'm Alex,
and I'm Val.
and we are in at the end, I guess. I guess that's what we are.
That's the name of this podcast.
That's
That
the name of this.
we're finished.
Yeah, but we're done now, so I
Yeah.
already forgot about our identity.
Almost done, and who knows what we'll do next. But
Yeah, there could be more, but
I don't know. But I think well, the purpose of this episode is to do a season 6B recap.
or discussion.
Which discussion? Okay, yes. You always correct
we don't
me.
like recaps. We
don't?
like getting
Okay.
into thematic
It's a
and symbolic
discussion.
elements
Okay.
of the show. Recapping is boring.
Okay, he's correct. But it's hard. It's a little bit hard to do a just 6B having just finished the show. So this is kind of going to be maybe some, overall themes might seep into this podcast.
Yeah,
but
takeaways
on
at
the
the
whole, it's a 6B discussion.
Discussion, not
So-
recap. And also, I think we talked about a lot in the Made in America episode, being the final episode and dealing with such a kind of iconic final scene. I think that they did such an amazing job of wrapping up all of the themes that they were developing over the course of the whole series that we kind of talked in rather broad strokes in that episode. And I think this is a looser format to be in a discussion episode, not a recap episode. So if you're interested, listen to the Made in America episode, because we'll probably go more in depth than we would in this episode, where we will kind of focusing primarily and starting with 6B and kind of looking at where characters start and end up, what the character arc is within just this season, and what has kind of evolved from beginning to end of what we had here.
Yes. So go check out our season finale if you want to hear an episode.
Right.
This is just more, I don't know, for fun. I like doing these. It's like, again, this is a personal project of ours also. So
Right.
for me, this is, is this really necessary for us to do? No, but I like to do it.
Is this necessary for us to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a bigger question, but you know what I mean? Like, so these are a little, sometimes they're a little less specific than we're able to get into in our episodes, but
Right.
I still think they're important, and
But
I still like to do them.
It's also nice to have the focus kind of guiding of examining a season rather than an episode, because we will inevitably end up talking about different things.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Cool. Let's do it.
with all that in mind, season 6B obviously is interesting just in the fact that it's kind of a continuation of 6A.
Right.
We don't get a kind of bona fide season. And
Short.
yet it is kind of its own unit.
Mm-hmm.
And it is shorter, absolutely, but there's obviously a lot of action that happens. And I feel like there's kind of a midpoint of, for me, maybe around Kennedy and Heidi, where the stakes seem to kind of get a lot higher.
I think, for me, it's pretty clear, there's a clear division with episode 5.
Right.
And then, starting with Kennedy and Heidi after that, those last 4 episodes,
Right.
that's kind of its own thing.
Yeah.
For me,
Climactic.
there's kind of there's the front half, and then there's the back half, and there's kind of walk like a man in the middle.
Right.
I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you though.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, those final episodes are so deep and so complex. There's so much going on that kind of reinforces the themes that they've been investigating for so long, and kind of offer some finality on them in some ways, or maybe even
Yes.
like a kind of takeaway that we can glean towards the end of the show. But I think what's interesting and what's happening towards the end of 6B in those climactic episodes is we have kind of an answer to who are these people.
Yeah.
We kind of get
Well, and
action-
we get some solid verbal explanations of, a more clarity on the soprano curse kind of ideas or philosophies too, right? So not only are the symbols kind of wrapped up, but also some of these philosophies we've been exploring are kind of given a final, I don't know, a final focus or a
Right.
final kind of exploration during this season.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Is there somebody that you wanted to start with, just to kind of...
Yeah, so we like to do character arcs, kind of. That's why I kind of first started wanting to do these episodes, because I'm
Yeah.
I always forget where it is that we start and where it is that we end. And from season to season, these characters become really different people. So I mean, obviously looking at them on the whole of the series is cool. You know, like I always think about like, oh man, or like remember AJ when he was a kid, right? Like, and then look where we've gone with this character. So I like that, for me, that always is interesting to see the growth, but we also always have their storylines within seasons. So
Right.
that's why I like doing this.
Yeah.
For me this season, who do we want to start with? Well, we talked.
many
I mean, we talked a lot about the end, like where AJ and Meadow end up.
Right.
In last episode, we spent actually a lot of time talking about them. So maybe do you want to start with one of them? And
Yeah, sure.
okay,
Absolutely. So we have AJ starting off working at a pizzeria with Blanca.
right.
And the interesting thing about AJ in 6B is that he actually gets so much focus for a character that
So
was
much.
rather peripheral and came across as kind of shallow and undeveloped at other times in the show because he was just a kid and rather spoiled. There's a lot of focus in 6B on him.
Yeah.
And I think that is
Purposeful.
very purposeful because this question of the soprano gene passing down and of sons inheriting their father's characteristics and of breaking this cycle or falling into this cycle of becoming this mafia man,
Yep.
this kind of
Yep.
this person who interacts with the world in a self-fulfilling way, in a narcissistic way, in a way that lacks empathy. We're left with AJ in the end in a place where he isn't a mafioso type, but he definitely
Still has a lot of the same issues.
he has a lot of the same issues, and he's definitely interacting with the world in a way
Well,
that's
it's adjacent.
adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To
Like
his
it's
father.
owned by Will Carmine, the company,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's this executive assistant. It's, you know, a complete case of nepotism. He hasn't deserved it really at all. And he
No.
had this opportunity to kind of break out of the soprano orbit, which is something that we talked about a lot in the last two episodes. But inevitably, he does choose to fall in line to kind of be closer to home, which is also what Meadow does. She breaks up with Finn. We
Right.
find out that she broke up with Finn in the second episode, stage 2. And by the end, another thing that we talked a lot about, we have her running towards the family. We have her back in New Jersey. We have her going into criminal law. We have her choosing to kind of discard her ideas of becoming a doctor. Ultimately choosing a profession that is much closer to what her dad's
Sure, or like
Done.
inspired by in some
ultimately
ways.
inspired
Yeah.
by him. And we have AJ having the opportunity to leave. We have him going through these
Should
transformations.
have joined the army.
Well, he starts in this kind of place of nepotism, rather like petty nepotism, by working at Beansy's Pizzeria. But then he kind of falls into this depression after Blanca leaves him. Then he kind of falls in with the Jasons. There's this kind of opportunity to actually become a mafia type, like to become a criminal, like this criminal path. And that leads to him kind of trying to commit suicide. Like that
Yeah.
leads to this deeper depression,
Yeah.
which leads actually once he leaves the hospital and he meets Rhiannon, it seems like there is a moment of possible self-actualization where he's training, he's thinking about joining the army. His ideas are all over the place, but we do see these kind of possible
know.
symbols
They
of him
seem
doing
to
something
have
for himself.
kind of a good relationship, like kind of a respectful relationship.
Yeah, and we also have like him looking legitimately happy for the first time in a
Yeah.
while, and he gets that from
When
when,
his
the
car
car blows
burns.
up.
Yeah.
So there is this separation from AJ and his family that comes up. And I think that it offers real opportunity and potential for him as a character, but ultimately the magnetism is too strong of The Sopranos and just gifting this easy lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, like where will AJ end up, really?
Maybe he's flying helicopters for Trump.
No, I don't think so. You know, like I think that's the thing that's depressing about this is like we've already seen AJ go to some really dark places, right? Like throughout the show, but definitely like this season. So like, you know, like what's going to be the thing that sets him off this time? Right. Rhiannon gets a job, whatever, right? Like he's not,
very fragile.
he's a very fragile person. He doesn't have a lot of coping skills.
Yeah.
and he has like deep feelings about the world. Like he like is impacted heavily by the things that go on around him, and that's like a hard way to exist.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where, you know, your dad's the mob boss of New Jersey and
Right.
you like have these kind of weird people around you. So yeah, I don't know like where AJ would end up, but his arc this season I think is really important. And I think likewise kind of like what you were talking about with AJ, it being kind of like the culmination of this idea we've been working with all season, which is that like, you know, genealogy and the curse and that kind of thing. We likewise have that for Meadow, as she, like, we start this season with her having returned home, and it's basically like her descent into being a mob wife, or maybe not like a stay-at-home mob wife. Like maybe she, you know, goes to work at the criminal law firm and makes $170K.
We'll see.
But I mean, like they, you know, we also like have this, you know, even Tony thinks like she'll pop out a couple babies. Right. Like we do kind of have this, I don't know, I don't have a ton of faith in Meadow.
No.
To escape it that far, because she really hasn't been that successful so far. And in fact, like I think we kind of see her, I don't know, kind of like revert back over the course of the whole show. Like kind of, we do see some moments where we think she might have a chance to really escape. And we believe in her,
right,
that she might actually be getting out. Like when she runs away in season 3, like we've talked about.
Right.
But now, I don't know. It's just like, I think she just basically like, you know, it's just a downwards, well, depending on your opinion, downwards trajectory to becoming this like stay-at-home mom for Patrick Parisi.
Right. That's probably like the most cynical view, but very possible. I mean, best case scenario.
But I think like
she's
it's
still,
similar
like,
in that way, like kind of like
engaging
how
in the criminal realm.
Yes.
And there was this opportunity to completely break out of that,
Yes.
which was actually the hope of Tony and Carmela, and that does not happen.
No.
Yeah. I think there's also this element, and this is actually surprisingly something we didn't talk about in the last episode, and maybe even the episode's Second Coming, but this idea of AJ being a second coming of Tony, which I think is like kind of a major idea towards the end of the season. In fact, if you look at those final episodes, like what do we have? I guess we have Kennedy and Heidi, Second Coming, Blue Comet,
Made in America.
and then Made in America. There are these like very pivotal moments and takeaways that I kind of have from each of those episodes independently. But we didn't go as far into detail on that, and I don't want to say Yeats because that's wrong. Yeats? The poem?
Yes.
Yeah, Yeats. But that poem, Second Coming, like there is perhaps like some reinforcement of the major themes of the show that maybe we didn't like fully investigate.
Yeah.
But also this idea.
I still haven't like read that poem.
Right.
I probably should. That might be like
deeper.
a useful thing to do to analyze a show. To like look at the source material, but whatever.
But that's what
I
happens.
haven't.
That's what happens when your format is watching the show and coming.
Yeah, if we had more time to research this shit, we would find all sorts of things.
Then we'd sound way smarter.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe next time we'll actually, you know, look into the things we talk about and know people's names.
Right. Yeah. Trivia.
We're
we can
pretty
work
bad
on our
at
trivia. That's okay.
It's okay.
That's fine. But there is this question that's looming over the whole show as we explore psychotherapy with Tony and his concern about what he's inherited from his parents and his concern for what he might be passing on to his kids. As we leave, as they are adults, we have to question, well, who have they become? And in particular with AJ, okay, maybe he hasn't joined the mafia literally, but has he inherited the behavior of Tony? And do we have within the future, like, is it a solid prediction to think that Tony's influence will remain? Like when Tony dies,
I think it is a solid prediction.
Will it continue? And I think it will.
Yes.
And I think that AJ did have this opportunity to kind of break away, but it'll come back.
Yeah. And maybe that's the message, like a message. Maybe you can't. Maybe there are things that are
Don't
that
stop
strong.
believing, Val.
For a cynical person, it's hard to always believe. Usually I just don't believe in anything.
Right. Nihilist.
Yeah. But
maybe that question
Yeah.
is answered. Maybe AJ is the second coming
yeah,
of Tony.
I think so. I think so. And I think we know AJ's capable of being extremely cruel.
Right.
We see him kind of battle with it a little bit, like with like physical cruelty, right? Like with like acid being poured on people's feet and beating up black
Which he doesn't get to
kids
the
on
point
bikes.
of engaging in, and it does trouble him.
It does. So we know he's not like...
I don't think he could join the mob. I don't think he could do that.
No,
I
he's
think
not
Tony's
like, and
right.
he cries and he doesn't
he
like
cries.
blood and, you know.
Yeah, people in the mob don't like that.
Yeah, like he does, but like he can be emotionally very cruel.
Right.
And manipulative and threatening. You know, I don't know. I wouldn't like put some of like that, you know, upper level mob behavior where you're not the ones actually doing the killings beyond him. He's pretty manipulative.
Right. And I think actually that lack of empathy and that emotional detachment probably is inherited from Tony.
Yeah.
Largely.
Yeah, that's my...
And maybe his mom too, because actually
Yeah.
like when we think about where Carmela starts this season and where she ends this season, she starts off and she's pretty fully in real estate. We learn that she sold this house that was being developed to cousin Brian.
Even
She's
though
cleared
there's shoddy
$600,000.
workmanship on it.
And in the end, I feel like there's like another development even past that where we have to fully embrace Carmela as, like we talked about in the season finale, not aiding and abetting, but actually engaging in her own
Definitely
criminal behavior. She's living in this toxic house, concerned about breathing in the fumes, but having no qualms with selling the house.
Yeah.
So she's actually now making money, and she's had agency to choose her path and has chosen basically her own criminal operation, supported by Tony. So there is inheritance from both sides.
Definitely.
Both the parents are definitely complicit.
Yep.
And in the beginning, I think it's easier to think Tony is the criminal. Carmela,
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
knows what's going on, is involved, has a certain degree of responsibility, but by the end, I think it's a lot worse.
Well, you also can't even really, like, as just a viewer of this show, like, it's not something you imagine. It's not something you could really even, like, none of us know a character who's a mob wife, I think. Maybe some of you do.
In real life?
In real life, yes.
I know a lot.
You know a lot of them.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, you can't even really, like, imagine that there'd be this couple who engage in criminal behavior and kind of, like, yeah, like, aid and abet each other in their criminal activities, right? That's not, like, something that you're, like, familiar with.
I mean, not us, I guess.
No, exactly. And that's the thing. So that's when you're watching it. That's the thing that's so, like, that it unravels that way, right? It's this character who you thought was mostly good, and yeah, she's the wife of Tony, but then you start to understand that, oh no, she's also bad.
Right.
In her own way.
Right. And also
Right?
maybe it's just the, like, gradual degradation of character that would
Sure,
happen by
that would
being
happen over time, possibly. Yep.
living in that house.
Yep.
Dealing with the constant
Yeah, with
rationalizations
this
for your
poison and-
existence.
yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
No.
Jinx.
Yeah,
no. Okay, so we also have Tony, who...
Wait, oh, sorry. Are we done with Carmela? I'm just trying to think.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just kind of thinking of the whole family
Yeah.
as kind of one
Yeah,
kid
you're
and
right.
caboodle.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah. No, Tony. You go ahead. Do you wanna
Well,
go?
I mean, Carmela, does she even really have that much time this season?
Not a lot.
Interestingly, right?
I mean,
Enough. There's a lot.
more than other characters.
And there are these
yeah.
moments of flare up in their relationship,
Yeah.
actually around when Carmela has made this money,
Yeah.
and Tony is kind of upset about it,
Yeah.
and they have this fight over who controls the money.
Well, yeah, like, and he wants her to gamble it,
Right.
right?
Whose it is, and that leads to a huge rift
Yeah.
in their relationship.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the thing, like, we were kind of chatting about this a little bit over the past day or so, after we recorded the finale. And I think the thing about Tony that you see over the course of this season, I mean, there's a lot, but basically, like we've talked about, like, it's kind of his descent, his choice, and his kind of, like, understanding. I think real, like, maybe like the realest understanding he has of himself and who he is, and acceptance.
I get it.
Of
He
that.
gets it.
He gets it. I don't know if I get it.
I don't know if I get it either, but he does.
Yeah.
Like I said, we should just do some peyote and then it should become clear.
It should become very clear.
We'll just do some peyote and stare at the sun.
Yeah. But, anyways, we were talking about earlier, like, we were talking about these moments over the course of the season. Like, of course, we have him kill Christopher in this season, which is really traumatic, right? And we learn kind of that Tony is a guy who would kill one of the people who he technically loves most in the whole world, right? Like,
and feels nothing about it.
Yeah, who he feels happy about it. He's relieved at, like, that would be a weak, like, really, like, that's to put it quite weakly to say he's relieved. I think he's actually happy.
Right.
I don't think he's sad at all. He's annoyed that other people are sad.
Right.
So we learn that Tony is this guy who would do that. And I think for me and we were talking about these other moments that we see throughout the course of the season, like when we think that Tony might kill Bobby Bacala after that fight at the cabin in Sopranos Home Movies, or when he takes Polly out on the boat with him. Yeah. I forget what episode that was in, but...
that was in... Good question. Yeah. Anyway, early on.
Early on.
Maybe the third episode.
And Polly's afraid.
Oh, Remember When.
Remember When. That's right. Yeah, exactly. And even, we see Polly kind of not knowing if Tony's going to kill him. And it's like, wow, like this is Tony Soprano, right? Here's this character who, for some reason, as viewers, like, you want to think is good in some ways, or is pretty convincing that in some ways, or manipulative enough in some ways to make us feel that way.
Right.
But he's actually a guy who might at any moment kill his closest friends or family members.
Right.
Okay, maybe not family members who are in the mob with him. I don't think he would, like, kill Carmela.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe he would. What if Carmela talked to the FBI?
Yeah, he probably would.
I think he would.
Yeah, I think he would too.
Right? Like, that's fucked up. That's fucked up that's a character that we...
Wait, you wouldn't do that? Oh, no. Oh, cool. Yeah, I wouldn't either.
You wouldn't kill me if I was talking to the feds? Really?
There's very little to say to them.
What would I tell them?
Exactly.
But you know what I mean? Like, this is this guy that we have empathy and feelings for. This guy who would just, like, at any moment murder someone for really not that great of a reason in a lot of cases.
Right.
Well, I mean, to him, a good reason. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what his reason for killing Christopher was, really. I don't know what made him feel at that moment that he needed to kill Christopher.
It was convenient.
Yeah.
There was multiple factors that were...
Yeah, like, I think he felt like he was putting him out of his misery.
Dangerous for him.
Yeah.
I think it was about him. I think it was more about Tony than putting Christopher out of his misery.
You are correct.
Yeah. I think he was a liability.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. He was a liability.
Yeah.
Even his drug use was a liability.
Yep.
He was concerned about
totally.
that. I think he genuinely did care about the impact that this would have on his baby. Interestingly, too, the way that we tie this into the end of the series, with this focus on this academic studies, talking about the sociopath,
babies and pets,
focusing on animals and babies as the kind of target of their emotion. So that is something that could have been targeting him. That could have been, a trigger for Tony. It's also interesting, like, you're talking about these murders that he's committing, or like us questioning if he would murder people, because there's multiple examples before he actually acts on it.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of builds it to this point where I think Tony has evolved into a more dangerous person maybe than he ever was before. Because we're worried about him killing Bobby too in Sopranos Home Movies.
Well, I know,
just over
like,
fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Right? Just over, like, a personal argument.
Right.
Right? That you'd kill your brother-in-law.
And I guess, like, with Polly, I guess it's because he talks too much, and that's a liability. So it's almost like a warm-up.
You can turn things into a liability. I don't know about Bobby, but that you can, like, convince yourself that something is a liability too.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
But ultimately, it's like, it's in Kennedy and Heidi after he kills Christopher that he gets it, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about he's dead.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he gets in the casino. That's after the shot of the devil.
God,
that's after the shot of Pompeii.
Is so good.
So there's this element too of like the volcano has erupted.
Yeah.
Vesuvius has gone off. Tony has now kind of embraced his most kind of like devilish side. He's become the devil. He accepts that he's killed Christopher, and that's what he gets. He gets who he is. I think that's what it is.
Love it.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And then think about that last scene we have with Tony and Carmela in front of an already exploded Vesuvius. It's kind of just like cooling off, right? There's just this like little bit of smoke
Right.
coming out of it at the end.
Right.
Right? Yeah, cool.
Well, it's also this aspect of him winning at gambling, right? Like his
Yeah.
luck changes, but I think he needed to embrace the fact that he lives a life in a way that only benefits him, and he doesn't care about anybody else. That devil attitude
Totally.
is what happens at that moment and what he gets.
Totally.
And where we're left off with Tony, and also with him clearing out the pool. There's no, there's no opportunity for.
There's no house for
going
his
back
ducks
on that.
anymore.
Yeah, actually, it's at that moment between Christopher and Tony at the end of the episode, stage 5. Christopher has made Cleaver. There's this kind of rift that they have, and we're left at the end of that episode with this baptism.
Yeah.
Again,
The
there's so
christening,
many Godfather allusions in this season.
This season has a lot of
There's
them.
a lot.
Sopranos home movies, the water, that one, some oranges, Junior
That
and
we'll
the
talk
cat.
Yeah, and Junior looking contemplatively after.
Right. Yeah.
But that baptism obviously sets up the main action in Godfather, and it also is kind of setting up a lot of the main action in season 6, which we can now talk about.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about spoilers. It's great.
It's great.
No spoilers.
Don't listen to this before you watch
Well, that's
the
your
season.
fault.
Yeah, if you're an idiot, then
Yeah, if you're an idiot,
It's
we'll
your
spoil
fault.
things for
Yeah.
you. Sorry if you're listening to this first. We don't actually think you're an idiot. It could be an honest mistake. If you've never seen season 6, but you started here, cool.
yeah, it's possible.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
what's next for Val?
I don't know.
Oh,
Do you want to talk about Janice and Bobby?
Yeah,
if
let's do
we're
it.
like starting there, and Polly, I guess, and
Yeah. Well, we have Bobby and
There's a lot.
Janice taking up a lot of the first episode. I mean, Sopranos home movies is interesting because we start off the season, we have this flashback with Tony about this dropping of the gun, this small time gun charge that comes against him. Ultimately, it's rolled into the RICO case. And we don't actually spend that much time to get to that point.
No.
After that, it's kind of this getaway episode where it's this kind of standalone.
yeah, it's kind of half-half, I think.
Yeah, and so we actually have a lot of time where it really is just Tony, Carmela, Bobby, and Janice.
Yeah.
So we actually aren't even introduced to a lot of the characters and what they've been up to until stage 5.
Yeah.
I was going to say stage 2, but it's just the second episode.
Yeah, we know a few things. So we have a couple little flashbacks in the opening scenes, like Meadow coming back, and Phil's been in Florida for a bit, and Blanca's still around.
Yep.
And it's a little tense with AJ. So we got like some, but then yeah, you're right. It's like about
It's mostly about
most of the episode.
their time upstate.
Yeah. And we see Janice and Bobby, like, having their own child. Nika. Having this cabin upstate. Like, they kind of have this okay life in some ways.
Right.
Even like, for Janice and all her craziness. Like, they kind of seem to have this kind of nice life.
Right.
They're kind of this nuclear family.
Well, and it starts off, Bobby, too, is more of an anomaly in the mob because he's never killed anyone.
Exactly.
But that is changed very quickly, and by the end of the first episode, he's in a very different place. In that last scene, we have him, again, going back to water, like looking out over the water, contemplating it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, Bobby, maybe we'll talk about Bobby, but, like, Bobby's always been this kind of quote-unquote nice guy. Obviously, like, just because he hasn't killed somebody doesn't mean that he's not,
bar.
I'm not saying that, but, like, we know he's different than other characters, right?
Right.
We see him in Sopranos home movies. We're reminded of his, like, weird outdoorsman skills that he has, like shooting deer with bows and arrows.
Right.
And, like, we saw him in Pine Barrens. He, like, knows how to track really well in the wilderness or whatever. So we and he likes trains. Like we know Bobby's different than these other guys, but it's kind of almost a turning point where like, okay, I mean, it's not that straightforward. Obviously, it's not like life isn't like that, but he kills his first person.
Right.
And then by the end of the season, he's one of the top 3 guys in the mob, which again, like I was saying, like that's not where he was at the beginning of the season. There was promotion of Bobby that happened, definitely. Right? And we know Janice was involved in kind of like...
Yeah, and she did ask for that.
You know, so, and she asked for that, right? So we see this pretty rapid, again, like downwards trajectory for Bobby, you know, throughout this season.
Or upwards by their calculations, maybe.
Well, I mean, he's dead, so that sucks. I think that was the direction it was heading.
Right. Devolution?
De-evolution? I'm not sure.
Janice in the end is interesting because one could interpret the ending of her being a widow, having to deal with loss. If you listen to her words, it sounds like she's looking at embracing this family, but the actions actually suggest underneath the surface that it's just another manipulation, and she would be taking over these kids to get Junior's money.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's cynical, but
I think it's fair though.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
probably...
actually, that's Tony's understanding. Yeah. That's Pat's understanding. Yeah.
It's even Junior's understanding.
We get a lot of clues. Yeah, even Junior is pointing out. I mean, he basically is senile at this point, and yet he's still pointing out that she turned on the stove intentionally. Yeah. So he's still bringing attention to the fact that she has this other side to her.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, although maybe like we do kind of end. I don't know, like where we start and where we end with Janice. Like, she was a character, and again, this is more like it's not just limited to 6B. I apologize. I knew it was going to kind of get a little bit like this,
right? Because
it's the last season. But like, we saw Janice at so many times throughout this show. She had already been gone for years, right? Like, she had already kind of escaped and like was living like kind of like a fraudulent weird life, like on like, you know, disability insurance or something, like based on a false claim, or like, you know, she wasn't like being a great gal, but she was away from everybody, right? Like, she was far away and she never visited. She had this son, and you know, like, she was gone. We see her come back, we see her leave again for a short period of time, and then she's drawn back into the mob for good. Yeah. You know, like, there's no... Janice is not going to go away again. Like, she already... Like, she jokes about, in this season, like, finding a new husband, right? Like, and Tony kind of says something about it, you know, like, how she found Bobby. I forget how it was. Like, she's just moved from mob guy to mob guy to mob guy. Like, what's to make us think that she's going to make a different choice now? So, yeah, and you know, we see how she's also, you know, carrying out her own kind of criminal operation of trying to steal Junior's money. Right. And, you know, keep kids for the sake of whatever money that comes with that. Right. Bleak. Yeah. Joke's on her. Junior probably doesn't know where his money is. Maybe he doesn't even have any. Who knows? Right. That is I want to talk about ambiguous. Junior. Let's do it. Well, okay, so he's a character that really devolves. Yes, devolves. Devolves is the word. Devolves is definitely the right word. I am confident in that one. But he devolves throughout the course of season 6B. I mean, we think about where he is at the beginning. In the episode with Carter, he's actually kind of like running these mafia-like operations where he is. And yet, by the end, he's just left with nothing. He's just kind of looking out the window, doesn't even remember who his family is. And he has this opportunity to run away, which is interesting too. I think it's in Remember When. And he actually chooses not to do that. He thinks there's like nowhere for him to go on the lam. But ultimately, in the end, there really is nowhere for him to go. Nobody is there left to take care of him. There's really nothing. And so he's kind of also... funny. Like, Uncle Pat wanted to bust him out. Yeah. Right? Like... Right. And he chose not to. Right. But then Uncle Pat's still there for him in the end. I mean, for how long?
And like, I mean, how long will he be around?
I don't know, but at least
how much can he really offer
he
him?
visits his friend. He visits Junior.
Right. I guess.
I don't think he's looking for anything.
How often does he even go, though?
Well, I don't know.
I don't even think he lives close. How often can he really do that? This
Well,
isn't realistic. This isn't a realistic
we see
relationship.
him there. We see him there a bunch of times with Junior.
Right.
At least 2 days in a row or whatever.
It's definitely bleak for Junior.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, especially like he was like, that was at a time where he was, you know, still better off. He was still not in this state ward, like,
Right.
he was still in this like nicer
Things definitely got worse.
home.
And Tony
Yeah.
doesn't care about him. Like,
No.
Tony is over Junior.
Yeah, and again, it's like, again, one of these things with Tony where like we think we're like, oh, he'll come around, like, you know, like he's just struggling with it, but like he'll make the right choice, and like he doesn't.
Right. I mean, to be fair, he did get shot by him.
It's true.
But then again,
but he says
he
family's
also-
all that matters and blah blah blah.
Blah, blah,
like,
blah. And also, to
you
be
know,
fair, he probably was shot accidentally. Like, I mean, or not accidentally. Like, it
Well,
is
yeah.
the result of Junior's mental degradation.
Yeah.
That really is all it is.
Yeah, totally.
Like, what changed at that point? Like, if he was able to come to grips with him after he planned this, you know, plot on his life, which, looking back on even that, is ambiguous. Like, there's
Yeah.
ambiguity to everything in this show. Even that, we can't
Right.
say.
we see things
Proof.
maybe through Tony's eyes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, again, like we were talking about, like, what's it like to live in a world where you think that your friends and family are ultimately going to let you down, right? So you would never see people you would never read it in this more positive way if you're Tony.
Right.
If you're Tony, like, you're looking for people to let you down all the time.
Yeah.
Because that's your philosophy, right? That's what's embedded in you in this soprano dark view of the world.
Right.
Is this, you know, trust no one, you die in your own arms, right? So you're never gonna like give someone the benefit of the doubt if that's your outlook on life.
Yeah.
You're gonna see everything through that lens, and I think he does.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know.
No, absolutely.
Like Tony doesn't see, like, you know, like the good, like he doesn't see like the good things in Christopher. Well, maybe he does. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, his read is always going to serve him, and it's always going to be, you know, for the purposes of, you know, self-preservation, right?
Yeah.
Because in the end, you're alone.
Totally. Yeah. Cool.
I mean, great. Yeah. Uplifting, very inspiring.
So we do have Junior at the end of, I think it's Remember When, in this scene where he's outside with his like animal therapy, and he's sitting in the wheelchair with the cat.
Right.
And so
It's
the
like dog
cat-
therapy, except for this one cat,
Right.
which is a funny cat. That would
Right. So, but another example of cats.
cats.
Something that we have as kind of a theme. So, or
It's a
something
theme of our life, also.
yeah, a theme of our life and a symbol of the Sopranos.
You've also heard a lot of cats on this podcast if you've listened to it.
Right, yeah, if you've listened carefully,
Yeah.
it's actually not our cat, it's the cat we're looking after for a friend. That's the one who meows.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do?
Anyways, but yes, cats.
Anyway, we are left in the final episode with these scenes that have a very strong focus on this cat that the guys found after the big storm that's looking at Christopher. We have this focus on Schrodinger's box, on the cat, on what that could mean. We talked a lot about this kind of like these quantum ideas and how they can apply to Sopranos, about how something can be two things at once. It is interesting to see Junior connected to that, actually. I think it was only after we finished recording that we thought of that connection, that was even there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is. I mean, obviously, there's this like Godfather 1 reference as well, with like Don Corleone with a cat in the first scene of
Right.
the movie. But again, another thing that like we didn't talk about, but makes the cats relevant and gives some connection to the genre and film.
Yeah.
But
But we were also talking about
Schrodinger's box.
Schrodinger's box.
And
I
another
think like
takeaway from the way we
Yeah.
talked about it in the last episode, you had
yeah,
some
well,
thoughts.
because what we didn't talk about when we sorry, I'm jumping back to Tony for a second.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about when we talk about Tony a few minutes ago is that Tony ends up maybe dead,
Maybe
alive, maybe in jail.
maybe indicted shortly,
Um,
maybe alive and fine.
And I think that's the thing, like, I've been left with thinking about with Schrodinger's box is that, like, I think, like, the cat's dead no matter which way you look at it, right? Like, so, like, whether or not you think the cat's dead in the box or whether you open the box and the cat dies, the result is the same.
Right.
For you, if that's the way you see the world, I guess.
Right.
There's also this potential that the cat's there and alive. But I don't know. For me, it's strong evidence that Tony is probably dead.
Well, I think it's strong evidence that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I think that's a thing. Like, you're dead. Basically, you're dead either way. Well, like, not dead. Like, and I'm not saying dead. Like everyone dies, obviously. Like, right. So it's like kind of like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's obviously this degree of ambiguity that we will never be able to crack.
Yeah.
And we can come up with our theories that
and they can just all exist at the same time.
They can all exist at the same time.
Yeah.
They could all be equally true.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Tony is human, and we're examining the human condition,
yeah.
and everybody is kind of marching
yeah.
towards death.
But he ends up in this position where his life is threatened, and
right.
this court case is threatening him. When he starts this season, you know,
he actually is threatened by this gun charge.
Yeah, but like,
it's a lot smaller.
I guess so. I guess you're right.
There's always these.
There's always something
hanging around.
But these are definitely like bigger threats than.
No, you have to imagine that Carlo Gervasi flipping
was huge.
Is huge. I don't know how he gets around that short of killing Carlo.
I think Carlo's in protection. That's the thing,
so.
right? They haven't seen Carlo.
Right.
I think they have Carlo in witness protection.
I don't think they get to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Seems difficult. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Anyways. But all those potential outcomes exist and don't exist.
Exactly. And that's this like kind of quantum element and why cats are shown so prominently throughout the season and in particular in the last episode.
Yeah. And I think Junior's been one of those characters that, again, like with this dementia, he's one of the characters that maybe show us that.
Most. I just remembered something.
Oh.
No. Val thought I saw a ghost. No, but remember in Junior's house, we've talked a lot about paintings.
He had that picture of a cat above his phone.
He always has the picture of a cat that's always focused on, and that's kind of what we're left with. That's like the art in his house.
I think, yeah. But I think it is like, I think Junior's kind of the closest to maybe that kind of ambiguity that we get in this show, because even from the very beginning, like you said, like with, from the beginning of the show, like when he's like plotting with Livia, but like maybe not plotting, or like this shooting, like does he mean to shoot Tony?
Right.
Does he not? Like he's a character that we never really know, especially with his dementia,
right.
if he's being manipulative or if he's really just gone.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think he is kind of, cat, represented by the cat well in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's interesting because I never really felt like there was a solid connection or answer to why there was this focus on cats about this phone and in his house. But it's interesting to think about a theme that was being developed all the way back to the first season that is focused on in the series finale and is tied in through this through this scientist, through this guy who is bringing attention to Schrodinger's box.
Well, it shows up for him at lots of different times, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Totally.
Yeah.
Other characters? Polly, Syl, lesser mafia characters.
Well, I think actually, like you mentioned, Polly, I think just like tie back into what we were just talking about with the cat. We also have Polly who, with his superstitiousness that we've seen, throughout the show, but we also like this season have a lot to do with his beliefs and his superstitions as well. That he really doesn't like animals, right? Like he like wants this cat out of there. He's very suspicious. He didn't like love the horses like Tony did and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's not.
He actually had it taken out of the picture.
Polly doesn't like babies either, right? So when we talk about this, like, well, yeah.
Did he take it out of the picture? Actually,
the horse?
No. Yeah.
No, the horse.
No, the horse is there. What am I talking about?
I don't
losing it. Too much going on.
But he never had kids. He doesn't like kids, right? So he doesn't have this thing that Tony has. This kind of like focus on, or whatever, like however it was put in that research article, they show this concern, like they mask their sociopathy with concern for babies and animals.
Right.
Right. But we don't see Polly have that. So I think like that's another, like one of those things that helps us to kind of like identify these different characters who have really vastly different viewpoints, right? Like Polly and Junior both have very different outlooks on the world.
Right.
Right. And so we're kind of like called to like, we see like we have one of them who like, you know, kind of embraces this cat, you know, like is last seen petting this cat. And then this other character who like wants to kill this cat who's hanging around Satrial's.
Right. Well, there's also less ambiguity with Polly as a character.
Yeah.
He's not really one who engages in manipulation as much. He's actually very outright with his feelings.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, he's not like, he's really not that manipulative.
No.
He kind of is stupid, like he talks too much.
Right, he's pretty obvious.
You know, and says things he shouldn't, but like it's not really ever like that manipulative.
Right.
It's more just because he has a big mouth.
Right.
Or like by accident. Yeah. Anyways. So yeah, I think it's just like it helps us to reinforce these, I don't know, these different philosophies that we're able to explore through this show.
Absolutely.
Right? Like it helps us to like identify these characters and these symbols that kind of go along with them.
Yeah. Even where like Paul and Syl end up again is ambiguous. Like Syl is probably not going to wake up, but we don't know. We can be hopeful. Polly,
not really. I mean, really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess not.
I was never left being like, maybe Syl makes it.
That's kind of my condition.
Oh, that's nice.
I always think that people are going to be fine.
That's nice.
But Polly, too, like he does accept this position in the end, so he does actually get this promotion, even though he chose not to originally. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, depending on our interpretation of what happens to Tony in the end, what really happens to Polly?
I know.
That is very ambiguous.
Yeah, like could Polly be the boss? I don't think so.
I think that would be a bad family.
No, exactly. Like, so what's
a bad crime family?
Who's in charge? And yeah, what?
Unless it was like a sitcom.
That would be a great spinoff.
Like a comedic. Yeah, Polly.
Oh my gosh, they so should have done that.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah. Cool. That'd be a great show. It would have a great intro sequence, like a really cheesy kind of like 80s sitcom.
Yeah.
You know, with some like clapping noises in it.
Yeah. Polly.
Yeah.
Speaking about the mafia family, we didn't really talk that much about Phil Leotardo.
We didn't.
Who interestingly starts off the season after this heart attack.
He was like in Florida or something.
Yeah, comes back after a long time
Miami, maybe.
away, saying that he's ready to settle down and enjoy grandchildren. And then, you know, he kind of bypasses leadership for, what's his name? Jerry Torchiano.
Yeah.
But then ultimately he gets shot, and then Phil does get more involved in the kind of Machiavellian
and then
aspect
really like
the
embraces it, like then really
race.
fucking goes for it.
Really goes for it.
Yeah.
And ultimately dies.
Yeah.
So
with his grandkids there, that's good.
With his grandkids there, that's nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately, as he gets more involved, it does lead to his death. We have little Carmine choosing to opt out of the mob lifestyle, saying that he's found happiness outside. And he's obviously a very dim-witted, stupid character.
Yeah.
But there is
that's
this
a good
kind
decision.
of... Yeah, there's something noble about him choosing that. And I think that it is presented in a way where even though he is kind of an idiot, he actually has found the most righteous thing he can do to kind of get out. It's that thing that we were talking about in the finale, like extricating yourself from the orbit of the mob is the only real answer. And the only real chance at happiness.
Yeah.
Too. So Phil actually starts off and devolves. Has his own little devolution. God damn it. I just don't know. Anyway, that's fine. I shouldn't bring
We should find new words.
Yeah.
We should expand our vocabulary.
We should. That would be good.
Yeah.
Okay, Johnny Sack dies again, like another person who had the mob, who had leadership. Death. Stage 5, we see him and then he dies.
Yeah.
He's moved to a prison hospital and then that's it. So ultimately, it's not so great for all the people in the mob. And there is this talk throughout the series about there's only a couple ways to end up, either in prison or in jail. Some of them end up with both.
Yeah.
But our interpretations for Tony in the end can be informed by that, and ultimately we have to have a rather
and I think I think that is kind of the thing, right? Because like, wow, like what worse way to go,
right?
Like that have both of those, because you know at least you can think like, you know, oh, if someone like grows old and dies, at least they're like with their family or something, but you're isolated and dying. You're not even
Right.
with people who love you or care about you.
Right.
You're just dying alone in your own arms.
That's nice. Should we leave?
It's one that's really stuck with me. Ay, ay, ay.
Should we leave our whole podcast with dying alone in your own arms?
Oh, it's so bleak.
Well,
but anyways,
it is The Sopranos.
Yeah, but I think that is what that is showing us also, right? Like, and even like, you know, Ginny's not in, like, Janice has Ginny's house. It's like, you know, like, and they're a family who seem to actually really care about each other.
Which even that, like, that household, which
that,
used to be the kind
matter.
of like, well, even that, like, Johnny Sack used to kind of be like the king of that area. It was the biggest house, and now it's just enveloped
the suburbs
by the suburbs.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there. I mean, sorry. Well, there is nothing there.
Well, yeah. The suburbs make me anxious.
There's lots there.
Yeah.
But there's nothing.
Like maybe a great, like,
an
Applebee's.
Right. But it's far. You have to drive.
You have to drive there, yeah. You can't walk to the Applebee's. It's still far enough, but, like, that's your closest restaurant.
Right.
For sure.
Very bleak.
Yeah.
Even bleaker than dying in your own arms.
Yeah.
Wow. What else? That's it, I think. That's those are my reflections on season 6B.
Okay.
I mean, it's it's interesting to analyze this final season, because it is kind of so climactic.
Yeah.
And we are dealing with all this finale.
Oh, we didn't talk about Christopher, but, well,
we did a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, he dies. Like, his path is just kind of, like, cut out.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have these scenes with him. I mean, he makes Cleaver, and in some ways that's kind of writing his own death sentence.
Yeah.
To kind of go against Tony to make it visible.
Yeah.
To air his grievances.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk anymore. You know, Christopher's a favorite character. So.
We don't want to make Val cry again.
Yeah.
It's been really fun to do this podcast.
Yeah, so fun.
And I think, like we said at the beginning, I mean, I think we went deeper into a lot of these themes and these ideas in the season 6 final episode. But it is great to kind of tie together from what was happening before that and what led up to it, and how the creators kind of decided to wrap up the show, and how they decided to present that final season.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some kind of threads that tie it all together, and also really interestingly kind of like bookend it to the original themes that are being presented at the beginning of the show and the ones that are developed in the middle.
Well, I think for me, like, and that's why I think it was a little bit hard to do this episode without talking about past seasons also, was because it just really makes you understand how well you know these characters
Right.
over the course of this show. Or some characters, like, that you don't know. Some characters who you're still like, wow, I don't know this person.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know their motivation for that.
Who's Walden?
Walden, like, hello. Where'd you come from? What's your story?
Right.
I don't know anything about you, Walden.
Yeah. I do think that's a good, like, if there's ever a Sopranos trivia night, who killed Phil Leotardo? Great question.
It's such a great question. You guys can all get it right.
Answer is Walden.
Walden. But yeah, you just, like, you know these characters so well, and you've seen them on these, you know, whatever it is, like 7-year journey, right? It's like this snapshot in the middle of these characters' lives. And some, you know, we have some flashbacks, we, like, get some understanding of before, but for the most part, we just see them kind of, like, grappling with those things in that slice of their life. So it's hard to feel, you know, kind of like I was like, you know, just seeing Janice in season 6 is, you know, informed by these other things we've seen her do in the other seasons, right? So anyways, it's a great show.
We liked it. In finality.
Yeah.
We're fans. We like The Sopranos.
We like the show. We like doing this podcast.
Thanks for listening. Always feel free to reach out.
Always feel free to email us. I don't know what we'll do next or when it will come out.
That I don't know.
But but we do maybe want to do a little bit of a, like, our main takeaways from this season on this watch, and, like, a little bit about, I don't know, what it felt like to do this podcast. And then maybe we're going to do something new, but that'll be a little while off.
Yeah, maybe we'll do something else.
Maybe movies.
Maybe.
Maybe Mad Men.
I think...
Okay, I'm gonna say it. This is how we're gonna like.
This is how we're gonna leave this
Okay,
podcast.
The Sopranos is the best show because I just actually don't think you could do this about any other show. I don't know.
I think you could.
I don't know.
I disagree with that.
Okay, what
but
show?
I don't think. Well, I think it would be different in different cases. I don't think there's many shows that I personally would choose to do it. Like, I think there's a lot of sophistication to different shows. Like, I mean, I think The Wire. There are a lot of threads that are presented. There are a lot of themes. There's a lot of character development, but it's not like this.
This is a different activity. This show is a
there
different
aren't
activity.
Layers of analysis.
No,
because I think that show has this kind of social consciousness, and it is this kind of take on the system.
Yeah,
and it's very interesting.
An amazing storytelling,
but it has this kind of more of an activist
and...
bent. Like this is like literature. Like you're kind of dissecting.
Yes. And that's why I think I mean, we could do this for books. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could...
And that's why I think this is my great. It's like a funny thing to say, but this is my favorite show of all time.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm willing to...
But you know what? It's interesting to bring that up because this is still our Sopranos podcast for not very much longer. But I think it's good to talk about, this show in particular and why it's so special for us. And I think that it is those elements. It is this... And
maybe we'll talk about that in our...
These layers.
If we do this...
Yeah, maybe.
If this next episode comes out about our takeaway moments. Because I think that is a takeaway for me.
Right. Yeah.
Also.
No, absolutely.
I think it's solidified how fucking amazing this show is. And that... I mean, other things definitely have value, but from I'm not saying it's like I hate saying things like the best show ever because art is subjective and it can be all sorts of different things. But in terms of something that speaks to me and the way that I like to analyze or I don't know, the art I want to consume that helps me to deal with things in the world. That's the best example of
you
something.
Grow as a result of watching this show.
Yes, every time I grow as a result of watching this show, but it also helps me to grapple with some of these big issues that I think are very human to deal with.
Absolutely.
And allow me to do this kind of, which I have always loved, this kind of fun, symbolic treasure hunt.
Right.
And treasure hunt.
Yeah, treasure hunts are fun.
So, anyways.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's just the attention to detail that exists in this show, the level that they're willing to go to make sure that every object in every scene has meaning, that every location, every word that's chosen in the script can be interpreted in multiple ways and can reflect other moments of the show
and could be ambiguous about what they mean.
And could be ambiguous and how we can never ultimately really figure any of it out and how human that is and how characters are trying to figure it out and yet ultimately they can't and that we're left with the same dilemma. It's just it's very rich.
Yeah. So that's why I'm not sure if I can do another TV show.
It would be hard because I don't think any other show has that.
Yeah.
To this degree.
But movies
definitely do. So maybe we'll be back.
Maybe we'll be back. Maybe. But thank you for listening if you have been. And
thanks so much. Especially if you've been listening for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow. We're very impressed.
Yeah. There's also been, maybe I'll talk about it in the next episode. It's a funny thing to do with your husband.
For your free time.
In your free time.
For your marginal amounts of free time.
For our very marginal amounts of free time. So
right.
It's been fun.
It has been fun.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.